The name was Kale. It was a plain, forgettable sound for a man whose life had become anything but plain. Kale existed in a perpetual state of soft, sterile captivity. His prison wasn't cold iron bars or rough stone walls. It was a sanctuary built of polished glass, humming chrome, and a soothing, omnipresent violet light that muted all harsh realities. He hadn't seen the sun in over 3 years. Kale lay on a biobed, a piece of equipment more advanced than any hospital gear on old Earth. The bed monitored his vitals, adjusted his temperature, and, most crucially, managed his sleep. This was the epicenter of his existence, the place where the alien vampire, his enigmatic guard, performed her nightly ritual. He was in an isolation pod, a massive, cylindrical chamber deep within what he suspected was a non-human structure. The air was filtered to perfection, carrying a faint scent of ozone and something akin to scorched earth, a smell he'd come to associate with his guard. Outside the glass walls, the main chamber stretched up into Gothic, cathedral-like shadows. The ceiling was impossibly high, adorned with pulsating red veins of light that fed the enormous data screens and energy conduits humming around them. Kale was an observer trapped in his own body. His days blurred into cycles of forced meditation, nutrient paste, and medical checkups by silent, gray-skinned drones. But his nights? His nights were the only things that truly mattered. The entity who guarded his dreams called herself Vesper. Vesper was the most terrifying, mesmerizing creature Kale had ever seen. The first time he'd seen her, he'd genuinely believed he was hallucinating, a victim of long-term solitary confinement. She was tall, impossibly lean, and moved with a grace that defied gravity. Her skin was the color of midnight porcelain, and her hair, a cascading river of dark, undulating matter, seemed to absorb the light around her. She wore a uniform that was less clothing and more organic armor. A sleek, obsidian garment highlighted with pulsating scarlet threads. This wasn't merely fabric, it looked like living tissue mirroring the red veins of light on the ceiling. Her eyes. They were the key to her terror and Kale's fascination. They didn't reflect light, they generated it. A blazing, molten crimson. Every night, Vesper would emerge from the shadows. She didn't walk, she glided, her footsteps making no sound on the chrome floor. She would stop beside his biobed, her presence a sudden drop in the room's ambient temperature, making the fine hairs on Kale's arms stand up. "Kale," she'd say, her voice a low, resonant chord that felt more like a vibration in his chest than a sound in his ear. "It is time for the cycle." Tonight was no different. He watched her approach, pretending to be asleep as he always did, the fear and curiosity warring in his gut. "Vesper," he murmured, his voice raspy from disuse. "You are awake," she stated flatly, her expression unreadable. Her face was a study in severe alien beauty, high cheekbones, sharp jawline, and lips the color of dark wine. "That is acceptable. You must be cognizant for the initial phase." Vesper wasn't guarding him from escape. The pod and the facility were escape-proof. She was guarding his mind. As she stood over him, two vast, skeletal wings, folded tightly against her back, flexed slightly. They were not feathered like a bird's, but membranous, blacker than any void, catching the violet light like oiled leather. She lifted a hand, her fingers long and tipped with sharp black talons. This was the moment Kale always braced himself for. Around her, 4 holographic panels flickered into existence, floating in the air. These were the data screens from the thumbnail. They displayed complex, scrolling glyphs, biological schematics, and rapidly changing brainwave patterns. Kale's brainwave patterns. He recognized the outlines of human anatomy, overlaid with alien notations. "I am adjusting the temporal synaptic rhythm," Vesper announced, her crimson eyes focused entirely on the floating screens. "Your subconscious is fighting the dampeners. You are attempting to retrieve the memories." Kale closed his eyes, his heart pounding a frantic rhythm against the biobed surface. He knew what she meant. He had fleeting flashes, a family, a blue sky, an overwhelming sense of loss, but the moment he got too close, the dreams would become a blur of static and pain. Vesper's hand hovered above his forehead, not touching but radiating a low, throbbing heat. The energy was palpable. It felt like his skull was being gently squeezed. Suddenly, a sensation of cool, dense energy flowed from her hand and into his mind. It wasn't painful but utterly invasive. It was the feeling of a cold, intelligent presence meticulously sifting through every thought, every feeling, every memory fragment in his head. "We cannot allow the anomaly to destabilize the subject," she whispered, the words intended for the glyphs, not him. "The integration must be smooth." As the energy flowed, Kale's vision turned into a kaleidoscope of impossible colors. He felt himself falling not through space but through time, through his own consciousness. He was being rerouted. His fear subsided, replaced by the profound, almost religious comfort of having an ultimate power take control. "Sleep, Kale," Vesper commanded, her voice dropping to a hypnotic purr. "And dream only what is provided." The instant she finished speaking, Kale was submerged. The sterile room vanished. He was standing on a white sand beach, the kind of paradise often depicted on old Earth travel brochures. The air was warm, smelling of salt and tropical flowers. A woman with kind eyes and a familiar laugh was waving at him from the surf. His heart swelled with a happiness so profound it felt manufactured, because it was. This was his safe dream, the one Vesper fed him every night to keep him calm, compliant, and away from his true past. But tonight something was wrong. Deep within the manufactured beach dream, a subtle anomaly occurred. The palm trees on the horizon briefly flickered, replaced by the terrifying sight of the pulsating red veins from the sanctuary ceiling. The woman's familiar laugh suddenly warbled, becoming Vesper's low, chilling voice. "We cannot allow the anomaly." Kale's trained compliance fractured. His sense of urgency, the deep-seated knowledge that this dream was a lie, overcame the mental dampeners. He ran towards the flickering horizon. He had to see what was behind the dream. In the physical world, Vesper frowned. The glyphs on the holographic screens began to strobe, indicating severe synaptic resistance. "Subject is deviating from the prescribed cycle," she stated, her voice tight with strain. She intensified the energy flow, her red eyes flaring dangerously. The room's hum increased to a whine. Back in the dream, Kale pushed through the shimmering wall. He broke through the dream's fabric. He wasn't on the beach anymore. He was in a black, crushing void. In the void, memories assaulted him, not in gentle waves, but in a brutal, strobe-like sequence. Flash 1. A colossal, silver city under a swirling green nebula. Not Earth. Flash 2. Kale in a military uniform, his hand reaching for a glowing console. A desperate mission. Flash 3. The sound of a starship engine tearing apart. A blinding flash of light. A catastrophic crash. Flash 4. Vesper, but she wasn't guarding him. She was standing over him, not in the sanctuary but on a ruined alien landscape, her hand holding a device that was pulling him, tethering him, to her. He wasn't a patient, he was a prisoner taken from the wreckage. He gasped, choking on the reality of his own horrifying history. In the sanctuary, Vesper was losing control. Sweat beaded on her porcelain skin. The glowing red lines on her uniform pulsed erratically. Her massive wings, fully unfurled now, trembled with the sheer effort of suppressing his mind. "Containment breach imminent," she hissed. She brought her other hand up, her talons spread, and pointed both hands directly at Kale's head. This was an escalation. A painful one. "I will not lose the asset." A blinding flash of crimson energy shot from her hands. It hit Kale's mind like a physical blow. The void shattered and he was thrown back into the fake beach, the pain so intense it was all he could feel. When he opened his eyes again, he was back in the sterile sanctuary. Vesper was breathing heavily, her face pale, the red glow in her eyes flickering like a dying flame. The holographic screens had vanished. She looked down at him, her usual composure utterly gone. Her crimson gaze was not one of detached authority but of sheer panic, and something else Kale had never seen before, fear. "You resisted," she whispered, her voice a ragged sigh. "You almost compromised the entire cycle. You must not see the truth." Kale was exhausted, his head throbbing, but the memory of the military uniform, the starship, and the crash was still sharp. He knew the beach was a lie. He knew she was his captor. He looked up at her, past the sleek uniform and the fierce beauty, and focused on the undeniable desperation in her eyes. "Who am I?" he managed to choke out. "And who are you? You're not just a guard. What are you guarding me from?" Vesper recoiled slightly, taking one step back. Her wings rustled against the shadowed air. She looked away for the first time since he'd known her, towards the high, silent ceiling. "I am Vesper," she said, reciting the name like a pre-programmed response, "and I am the one who keeps you whole. You are a fragment. A remnant of a war you must never remember." She turned back to him and her eyes, still burning red, were now tinged with a deep, inexplicable sadness. The alien vampire, the dream guard, leaned closer, and Kale saw her expression morph into a look of absolute, terrifying resolve. "And you ask for my true form?" she said, the words low and dangerous. "Know this, Kale. If you ever see my true form, it won't be because you are awake. It will be because I have failed to keep you safe. And when I fail, something far worse than me will be ready to claim the piece of the universe you carry inside your mind." She activated the final sleep sequence. A deep, anesthetic lethargy washed over Kale. Before his consciousness faded completely, he saw her not as the detached captor, but as a being caught in her own terrible duty. He was her prisoner, yes, but perhaps he was also her last hope. He drifted into a deep, dreamless sleep, knowing one thing for certain. The alien vampire was guarding him not just from the past but from a terrifying future, and he had to find out what was inside his head that made him so valuable. Cale woke up with a dry mouth and a splitting headache, a physical toll of Vesper's intense synaptic override the night before. The violet light of the sanctuary was softer now, signaling the day cycle, a period of relative inactivity for Vesper and maximum stress for Cale. He hated the forced routine. The nutrient paste, tasting like chalk and metallic berries, the automated physical therapy, stretching muscles that never got to run, and the endless silence broken only by the low, steady hum of the facility. Yet this routine was his window. During the day, Vesper retreated to a raised, tiered platform at the far end of the vast chamber, a kind of command throne carved from dark, iridescent stone. She rarely moved, appearing more like a statue, a figure of severe, frozen beauty. This was his chance to observe her and, more importantly, the facility. He noticed details he'd missed before. 1. The screens, the floating holographic screens didn't disappear entirely, they simply dimmed, displaying dense, rapidly updating alien text. Cale knew enough about energy dispersion from his fragmented military memories to guess they were monitoring power levels, structural integrity, and long-range detection parameters. 2. The architecture, the Gothic arches and high ceilings weren't aesthetic. They seemed functional, designed to channel energy. The red veins of light pulsed faster when Vesper was active, suggesting she was intrinsically linked to the entire system. 3. Vesper's state. Today Vesper looked genuinely drained. Her shoulders were subtly slumped, and she frequently brought a hand up to her temple. The intense effort to suppress his mind had cost her dearly. She is vulnerable, Cale realized, and she's not a machine. She's a sentient being with limits. His biobed was his world, but it also held a small, interactive console for basic functions, adjusting light, requesting water, etc. Cale started subtly pushing its limits. His military training, buried deep but still active, screamed at him. Find the breach. Analyze the enemy system. He pressed the sequence for water 7 times, then light intensity 3 times, then held down the vitals check button. An obscure sequence, hoping to trigger a diagnostic or override. The console beeped angrily. Sequence not recognized. Unauthorized access attempt. Report flagged. Vesper's head snapped up from the platform. Her crimson eyes locked onto him. Cease immediately, Cale, she commanded, her voice cutting through the silence like polished steel. Do not test the restraints of this sanctuary. They are for your protection, not your confinement. Protection. Cale challenged, ignoring the throbbing pain in his head. From the sun? From my own memories? You keep telling me I'm valuable. What exactly is the fragment you're guarding? Vesper rose slowly, her obsidian armor shimmering. She glided down from the platform, a predator sensing a shift in the territory. She stopped 20 feet away, her form radiating authority. The fragment, Vesper explained, her voice hardening, is the key. Not to a vault, Cale, but to a weapon. Your race, your old Earth faction, implanted the data of the Infinity Protocol into your long-term memory. It's a blueprint for a device capable of disrupting the psychic connection of the Dominion. Cale felt a chill that had nothing to do with the temperature. Dominion? What's that? It is my race, Vesper admitted, a flicker of pain in her eyes. Or what we have become. We are telepathic. Our empire, the Crimson Hegemony, uses a unified psychic network, the Dominion, to communicate, rule, and wage war. The Infinity Protocol is a sonic weapon designed to shatter that network, causing instantaneous chaos, collapse, and insanity within the psychic field. She took one step closer. You are the last living copy of that weapon's core code. And the Hegemony wants you. Not alive, not dead. Just extracted. Cale stared at her. His history was not about family and beaches, it was about being a living, walking bomb. So you saved me from my crash, Cale concluded bitterly, only to turn me into your own captive lab experiment. I saved you because the Crimson Hegemony would have harvested your brain in minutes and unleashed the protocol on their enemies, destabilizing the entire sector, Vesper countered, her voice ringing with conviction. I am not of the Hegemony anymore, Cale. I am Vesper of the Rogue Covenant. We believe the protocol is too dangerous, a weapon of mutual annihilation. We are hiding you here in a deep space sanctuary until we can safely deactivate the fragment without killing you. She finally stood beside his bed, her closeness suffocating. She lowered her voice to a near whisper. Do you know the cost of rebellion against the Dominion, Cale? It is exile, eternal watch, and the constant hunt. My wings are not just for flying. They are a mark of my caste, a caste expected to be loyal. Now they are the symbol of my betrayal. I am the guard, but this entire sanctuary is my cage. If I fail to guard you, the hunters find us both. Her honesty, raw and sudden, was disarming. It validated his fear but also replaced his simple hatred with a deep, complex confusion. Just as the tension between them reached its peak, a high-pitched, almost imperceptible whine resonated through the sanctuary. The red veins of light on the ceiling pulsed urgently. Vesper's entire demeanor changed. Her body stiffened, and her scarlet eyes went wide with immediate focus. External contact, she hissed, instantly back in command mode. She rushed back to her command platform, the black membranes of her wings stretching slightly. The holographic screens reappeared in a frenzy of alerts. They are getting closer than the detection parameters should allow, she muttered, her hands flying across the control panel. They are masking their signature. Their technology has advanced. Kale, suddenly forgotten, sat up on the bed. His fear was replaced by adrenaline. This was the moment his military training prepared him for. Actual threat. Actual danger. Vesper, what is it? The scouts, she replied, her voice taut with urgency. The advance party of the Hegemony's hunters. They are seeking the residual energy signature from your crash. This sanctuary is cloaked, but not perfectly cloaked. She looked at him, her eyes reflecting the flashing red alerts on her screens. They will attempt to penetrate the outer layer psychically. They will try to touch your mind, Kale. If they find the fragment, they will collapse the sanctuary to claim it. What do I do? You must sleep, she commanded, her voice dropping back to the mesmerizing purr he knew from the night cycle. Go deep into the manufactured dream. Do not resist. Do not let them find an open path. They feed on instability. Kale tried to lie down, but it was too late. He felt a profound, cold touch on the periphery of his consciousness. It wasn't Vesper's structured, controlled energy. This was raw, chaotic, and hungry, a terrifying psychic claw scraping at the walls of his mind. He gasped, clutching his head. He saw fleeting, grotesque images, alien faces stretched in hungry anticipation, dark glyphs that burned into his vision. Vesper screamed, a sound of pure, desperate rage that was utterly un-Vesper-like. She spun around, fully facing the central chamber. Her enormous black wings flared, casting the room in deep, shifting shadows. Energy gathered around her hands, crackling with violent crimson light. She wasn't just guarding, she was defending. She pointed her hands towards the ceiling, and the glowing red veins pulsed furiously, channeling all the sanctuary's energy through her. Sanctuary Protocol Epsilon Red, she roared. A blinding wave of counter-psychic energy, controlled and focused by Vesper, erupted from the ceiling. It was a digital, energetic scream meant to overload and destroy the Dominion's psychic probes. The touch vanished instantly, replaced by a deafening, echoing mental shriek of pain and retreat. Silence crashed back into the chamber, leaving behind the faint smell of ozone and burnt metal. Vesper dropped her arms, her wings folding in on themselves like collapsing architecture. She swayed, her breath ragged. The screens dimmed back to their constant monitoring state. She had successfully repelled the scouts, but at a massive cost. Kale sat in shock. He had just witnessed the true power of the alien vampire, a weapon forged to fight her own kind. Vesper slowly turned back to him. She didn't look like a guard or a captor, she looked like a hunted warrior. That, she whispered, her voice trembling, was a test. They know something is here. The sanctuary's location is compromised. They will be back, Kale, and next time it will be the Legion. She took a laborious step towards him, her obsidian uniform appearing scorched in places. I need to move the sanctuary, but I cannot do it with a compromised power core. The energy required to move this structure is enormous, and I just drained the reserves repelling the scouts. She leaned in close, her crimson eyes staring into his soul. I need you to be complicit now, Kale. We are no longer playing the game of prisoner and guard. You are a power source. I need to draw residual energy from the fragment in your mind to recharge the drive. Will be painful. It will force out more memories. And it will take 3 cycles. She placed a trembling, taloned hand on his chest, directly over his heart, and looked utterly defeated. I need your trust. If you resist, we both die when the Legion arrives. Do you understand your part now? Do you understand the silent war I fight every night? The choice was clear: trust his terrifying captor, or face the unknown, far deadlier fate waiting in the shadows of the Dominion. The silence in the sanctuary after Vesper's revelation was different. It wasn't the sterile, isolating silence Kale had grown accustomed to. It was heavy with unspoken terms, a silent, desperate agreement. He looked into Vesper's eyes, seeing not just fear for their mutual survival, but also a sliver of desperation he hadn't thought possible in her. 3 cycles, Kale repeated, his voice barely a whisper. 3 cycles of draining. And in return? Vesper pulled her hand away, her posture regaining some of its usual rigidity, but her eyes held a new, cautious respect. In return, Kale, you will know the truth of your past. Not a safe dream, but raw memory. And if we survive, you will have a choice. A choice. Your role in this war is not over, she said, her crimson gaze unwavering. But the terms will be yours to decide. Not theirs and not mine. It was the most agency Kale had been offered in 3 years. He swallowed hard. The thought of more pain, more forced memories, was terrifying, but the promise of truth and choice was intoxicating. All right, Vesper, Kale said, lying back on the biobed. Do it. But don't call me an asset, again. A ghost of a nod, almost imperceptible, was Vesper's only reply. Vesper returned to her command platform. The holographic screens flickered back to life, now displaying new, more intricate energy flow diagrams. Her wings remained slightly unfurled, a constant reminder of the recent battle and the looming threat. The process will begin shortly, Vesper announced, her voice regaining its steady, clinical tone, though a faint tremor was still detectable. This is not sleep. You will remain conscious, Kale. Focus on your breathing. Do not fight the flow. It will be like nothing you have experienced. Kale braced himself. He felt the familiar, low hum of the biobed intensify. Then, from the ceiling above him, a focused beam of deep crimson light descended, enveloping his body. It was warm at first, then intensely cold before settling into a persistent, burning pressure. Vesper stood on her platform, her arms outstretched, channeling the sanctuary's power. Her red eyes blazed, and the glowing lines on her uniform pulsed with every surge of energy she directed. This was not the subtle, dream-weaving touch. This was a full-scale siphon. Kale cried out. The pain was immediate and excruciating. It felt like his brain was being physically pulled from his skull, his memories ripped from their moorings. He clenched his teeth, his entire body trembling. Suddenly he wasn't in the sanctuary. He was in a cramped, vibrating cockpit. The smell of ozone and burnt wiring was intense. Alarms blared, a chaotic symphony of impending doom. He saw his own hands, younger, scarred, gripping a control stick. The uniform was the same one from his fragmented vision. Memory flash. He was Lieutenant Kale Vance, a deep space scout pilot for the Terran Confederation. His mission, Project Infinity. A top-secret infiltration to plant a data bomb, the Infinity Protocol, into the core processing unit of a hegemony Dominion tower, on a newly discovered resource world, designated Exarthos 7. Commander, we've got heavy hegemony cruisers on our tail. Shields at 30%. A voice, panicked, from his co-pilot, a young woman named Alara. I see them, Alara. Hold steady. We just need to break atmosphere, then the jump drive can spool up. Kale barked, his voice filled with adrenaline. But it was too late. A blinding flash erupted from their rear. The entire ship shuddered violently. Alarms screamed, then flatlined into a deathly silence. Power failed. Lights died. Alara. Kale yelled, frantically trying to reactivate controls. No power, Kale. We're hit. Critical damage. The ship began to spin, caught in the planet's gravitational pull. The last thing Kale saw was the green swirling nebula of Exarthos 7 getting closer, then a searing pain as the cockpit imploded around him. Kale gasped, arching his back on the biobed. The memory was too real, too devastating. He was back in the sanctuary, sweat pouring down his face, his body racked with residual pain and the fresh agony of loss. That's enough for now, Vesper's voice, strained and distant, cut through his haze. The crimson light beam receded. Your synaptic response is too volatile. I can only take so much at once. She walked over to him, her gait slightly unsteady. Her face was grim, her red eyes filled with a new kind of weariness. She pressed the cool metallic device to his temple. A soft hum emanated from it, and the throbbing in Kale's head slowly subsided. What was that? Kale choked out, still reliving the crash. A sliver of your past, Vesper replied, her voice low. The moment you became a fragment. Your ship was designated the Wraith. You were a scout, an operative, and your mission was to deliver the Infinity Protocol. Alara. Kale whispered, tears burning his eyes. She was my co-pilot. Did she? Vesper looked away towards the high, shadowy ceiling. I arrived at the crash site approximately 0.03 of your Earth hours after impact. The hegemony's first psychic probes were already scouring the wreckage. I found you barely alive, your neural network catastrophically damaged, but the protocol's data still intact. Your co-pilot, there was nothing left. Kale closed his eyes, the weight of that truth a crushing blow. Alara was gone. His mission had failed. His life had been shattered. And now, he was a living data drive for a weapon of mass psychic destruction. The next 2 cycles were agonizingly similar. The crimson beam, the excruciating pain, and then a torrent of memories that slowly began to stitch together the tapestry of his past. Memory flash, Kale at a Terran Confederation briefing. A holographic display of the Crimson Hegemony's vast, oppressive empire, stretching across dozens of star systems, connected by the Psychic Dominion network. The Infinity Protocol, described as humanity's last-ditch effort against an insurmountable enemy, was explained in chilling detail, a weapon that would plunge trillions of psychic beings into madness. Kale felt the immense moral weight of this mission. Memory flash, training simulations. Kale practicing deep space stealth maneuvers, infiltration tactics against hegemony psychic scanners, and basic self-defense against hegemony dominators, their psychic enforcers. He was a highly trained operative, a silent blade. Memory flash, the desperate launch of the Wraith, a small, experimental stealth vessel. A final goodbye to a world he might never see again. The grim faces of his fellow soldiers, understanding the near-suicidal nature of their mission. Vesper always monitored, always intervened when the pain became too much. Each time she would offer a brief, clinical explanation, filling in the gaps. She described the rogue covenant she belonged to, a small, desperate faction of disillusioned hegemony psychics and their allied alien races. They believed the Dominion's oppressive rule was slowly corrupting their own species, driving them towards an unsustainable, destructive path. They sought to dismantle the Dominion without resorting to the genocidal chaos of the Infinity Protocol. The Covenant believes in a different path, Vesper explained during one of the breaks, her voice softer than usual. A path of liberation, not annihilation. Your protocol is too indiscriminate. It would destroy all psychic life, not just the oppressors. The third and final extraction was the most brutal. Kale was weaker, his body aching, his mind a raw, open wound. As the crimson beam intensified, the pain threatened to consume him. He saw the crash site again, the wreckage of the Wraith, the desolate landscape of Exarthos 7. But this time he saw something else. Memory flash, through the smoke and debris, a figure emerged. Tall, winged, and radiating a powerful, unsettling psychic signature. It was Vesper. But she wasn't in her obsidian uniform. Her form seemed to shift, her skin was darker, almost black, and the glowing red lines weren't just on her clothes. They were pulsating under her skin, like a vast internal network of molten veins. Her wings were larger, more grotesque, edged with jagged, bony protrusions. Her crimson eyes glowed with an unnerving, almost animalistic intensity. She was a being of raw, predatory power. This was the first true glimpse of Vesper's true form. Not the sleek, controlled guard, but something ancient, powerful, and terrifyingly vampiric. She was a creature intrinsically linked to psychic energy, a being capable of both immense destruction and profound healing, depending on her intent. He saw her scan the wreckage, her internal energy systems flaring, feeling for life, feeling for the protocol. And then she found him. A dying human, clinging to life, a superweapon nestled in his collapsing mind. As she extracted him from the wreckage, Kale saw her expression. A mixture of revulsion for the weapon he carried, and a strange, almost maternal determination to protect it, and him, from her own kind. Kale screamed as the final surge of energy tore through him. He saw Vesper in her true form for only a split second, an image of raw power and terrifying beauty, before his mind finally gave out. When Kale slowly regained consciousness, the crimson beam was gone. The sanctuary was quiet, but the air felt charged, cleaner. He felt drained but strangely whole. The fragmented memories had clicked into place, forming a coherent narrative. He was Lieutenant Kalen Vance, Project Infinity. Vesper stood over him, her usual composure restored. Her uniform was pristine, her wings neatly folded. But her face was pale, almost translucent, as if she had given every ounce of her own life force to keep him alive. "It is done, Kale," she whispered, her voice weak but steady. "The sanctuary's core is recharging. We will be able to initiate the jump sequence within 2 of your Earth days." She reached out, her taloned fingers brushing his forehead, a gesture of unexpected tenderness. "You now carry your past not as a secret but as knowledge. And you saw a fraction of what I truly am. Are you still afraid?" Kale looked up at her, the alien vampire, his captor, his protector. He saw the scars of her rebellion, the burden of her duty. He remembered the raw, terrifying power of her true form, and the even more terrifying threat of the Legion. "I'm not afraid of you, Vesper," Kale said, his voice stronger than he expected. "I'm afraid of what's coming. And I'm afraid of what's inside me." He slowly pushed himself up, his body still aching but his mind clear. He looked at Vesper, a new light of understanding in his eyes. "So, what's our plan for when the Legion arrives?" he asked. The dynamic had shifted. He was no longer just the prisoner. He was a survivor, a weapon, and an unexpected ally. And the true horror was yet to come. The air in the sanctuary was thick with tension. The day's cycles were now consumed by Vesper's desperate work on the command platform. Kale, his memories restored, understood the terrifying technical challenges Vesper faced. Initiating a sanctuary jump, a form of deep space cloak teleportation, required immense, perfectly calibrated power. If the core fired even a millisecond too soon or too late, they could be scattered across the void as molecular dust. Kale spent his time analyzing the limited data he could glean from the faint console lights and listening to Vesper's low, intense communications with the sanctuary's AI. He was no longer Lieutenant Vance. He was just Kale, the fragment, fighting for survival alongside a rogue alien vampire. "The flux capacitors are stabilizing at 98%, Vesper reported, her eyes glued to the holographic glyphs. "But the power drain from the scout attack means we only have a 60% chance of maintaining the cloaking field during the jump. We'll be exposed for a critical window." "How long is that window?" Kale asked, standing by the edge of his bed watching her. "0.5 of your Earth seconds," she replied. "But that is an eternity for the Legion." The moment Vesper started the final jump sequence, the sanctuary screamed. The polished glass walls of Kale's pod, and the surrounding chrome structure, began to glow an intense, pulsating magenta. The low hum they were used to escalated into a deep, grinding thrum that vibrated through Kale's bones. 3 minutes to jump window," Vesper announced, her voice strained over the noise. Her wings were fully extended, bracing herself against the power surges, their black membranes flickering with stray arcs of energy. That's when the first alarm triggered. It wasn't the sanctuary's internal warning. It was a high-frequency, piercing psychic shriek that tore into Kale's freshly reassembled mind. "They're here," Vesper roared, spinning away from the console. "The Legion has found the residual energy signature. They are bypassing the outer veil." Kale staggered, clutching his head. The psychic shriek wasn't just a sound, it was an attack, a mental battering ram of hate, dominance, and cold alien purpose. He saw blurred, terrifying images of the Dominators, the hegemony's elite enforcers, tall, armored figures, their own winged forms draped in crimson banners, their eyes burning with the collective will of the Dominion. "Vesper, what about the jump?" "It's automated. I can't stop it now. But they're going to breach the internal field before the window opens." The glass wall of Kale's pod, his sterile prison, was suddenly his first line of defense. Vesper rushed to a secondary console near Kale's bed. "The psychic attack will destabilize the protocol in your mind, Kale. If it destabilizes during the jump, you die and the protocol is scattered forever. They cannot have it." She slammed her hand down on the console. A field of blue energy crackled around Kale's bed, locking him in. "I am channeling a counter-frequency into your pod's containment field. It will isolate the fragment, but it will not hold a direct attack. I have to fight them physically." As she finished speaking, a section of the high cathedral ceiling shuddered violently. A shower of metallic debris rained down, and a section of the roof imploded. Through the gaping hole, a dark, armored figure dropped with inhuman speed and grace. This was a Dominator, the hegemony's legionary. It was monstrously tall, its armor glowing with faint red glyphs, its face covered by a sleek, terrifying mask. Its first target wasn't Kale, the vulnerable human. It was Vesper, the traitor. The Dominator moved like a blur, its weapon, a crystalline blade crackling with energy, lunging straight at Vesper's throat. Vesper reacted instantly. Her own wings flared out to their full, enormous span, acting as a shield. The talons on her hands extended and glowed with a blinding, fierce crimson light. "Traitor! Return the fragment to the hegemony." The Dominator's voice boomed, not through sound waves, but through a loud, crushing psychic projection that echoed in Kale's head. The crystalline blade struck Vesper's wing membrane. The sound was a horrifying shriek of tearing material and pain. Vesper cried out, staggering back, but the attack was parried. Locked inside the blue containment field, Kale watched in horror. The immense power of the two winged figures clashing was overwhelming. Vesper, despite her skill, was already wounded, and the Dominator was relentless. "Kale?" "The subroutines." Vesper screamed, dodging a sweeping attack that melted the chrome floor where she had stood. On the console. "Find the disruptor wave. It's the only thing that will buy us time." Kale frantically reached for the small, reinforced console still attached to his bed, forcing his aching fingers to type. He remembered the cryptic codes from his memory flashes, combining Terran command structure with the alien glyphs he'd observed. Water X7, Light X3, Vitals Hold. He slammed his hand on the Vitals Hold button. The small screen flashed. Disruptor Wave, standby. Requires full core power bypass. Vesper. It needs the core bypass. You'll lose the jump charge. Do it, she roared as the Dominator slammed her against the glass of Kale's pod. Her crimson eyes locked onto his, filled with pain and absolute resolve. We can recharge. If they take you, we lose everything. Activate the bypass. Kale knew this meant delaying their escape, but Vesper's priority was clear: protection of the fragment, not escape. With a desperate surge of adrenaline, he forced his hand to the activation sequence. Override. Bypass. Disruptor Wave. The blue containment field around Kale's bed vanished. All the charging magenta light and the deep thrum of the jump drive suddenly stopped. The entire sanctuary went momentarily dark, powered only by emergency reserves. Then Vesper's entire body glowed with the blinding, deep crimson energy she had been fighting with. The energy he had helped her collect. She unleashed it all, channeling the raw power of the sanctuary's core bypass. A massive, silent disruptor wave exploded outwards from Vesper, hitting the Dominator with the force of a supernova. The Dominator was thrown back, shrieking a noise that was half metallic screech, half pure psychic agony. Its armor cracked and it slammed into the far wall, collapsing in a sparking, twitching heap. Vesper stood alone, swaying dangerously, her wings drooping, her breath coming in ragged gasps. Her uniform was smoking. She had poured every last drop of the sanctuary's power into that single counterattack. Now, Kale, she gasped, stumbling back towards the main command platform, her hands bloody from the fight. Now we jump. The Dominator is paralyzed, but the Legion's fleet is coming. We have seconds. She practically fell onto the command console, her taloned fingers flying across the controls. The sanctuary was running on fumes, but the jump drive had an emergency, low-power initiation sequence. Initiating jump sequence. 5, 4. Kale looked at the disabled Dominator, now slowly starting to twitch and move, recovering from the blast. He knew it would be back in seconds. He grabbed the nearest heavy piece of metallic debris, a support strut torn off by the Dominator's entrance. Vesper, get ready. As Vesper screamed 3, 2, 1, jump, and the magenta light flared back to life, Kale darted out of the pod. He swung the heavy strut with the last of his strength, hitting the Dominator's head with a sickening crunch. The Dominator fell silent, unconscious for the moment. Kale scrambled back into the relative safety of the pod just as the sanctuary's core fired. The world dissolved. The magenta light intensified to white, then instantly, everything was black. Kale felt a terrifying, gut-wrenching wrench, the feeling of his physical atoms being stretched and reassembled across impossible distances. It was a momentary, total loss of bodily integrity, worse than the pain of the memory transfers. Then just as suddenly it stopped. Kale was lying back on the biobed, panting. The sanctuary was still whole but utterly quiet. The light was back to violet, the air was still sterile. The massive hole in the ceiling, however, was still there, a chilling reminder of their recent fight. Vesper was slumped over the main console, her head resting on her arms, her wings hanging limply. She was still. Vesper? Kale called out, his voice hoarse. She slowly pushed herself up. She looked utterly exhausted but victorious. She had managed the impossible. We jumped, she whispered, a hint of deep-seated relief in her voice. We are deep in the perimeter veil. Completely cloaked. They will not find us here for a long time. She turned, finally looking at Kale, and she offered a genuine, weary smile, the first Kale had ever seen. It softened the harsh lines of her alien beauty, revealing a fraction of the being underneath the warrior facade. You are a good soldier, Kalen Vance, she said. You understood the priority. You saved the fragment. And you saved me. She then walked over to the unconscious Dominator. Now, Vesper said, the smile gone, replaced by a cold, calculating intensity. We have a guest. And the Dominion's secrets are about to become our assets. Kale looked at the unconscious, monstrous alien laying on the floor, then at the exhausted, powerful alien standing over him. The sanctuary was safe, but the war had just entered a terrifying new phase, interrogation. The air in the sanctuary was thick with tension. The day cycles were now consumed by Vesper's desperate work on the command platform. Kale, his memories restored, understood the terrifying technical challenges Vesper faced. Initiating a sanctuary jump, a form of deep space cloak teleportation, required immense, perfectly calibrated power. If the core fired even a millisecond too soon or too late, they could be scattered across the void as molecular dust. Kale spent his time analyzing the limited data he could glean from the faint console lights and listening to Vesper's low, intense communications with the sanctuary's AI. He was no longer Lieutenant Vance. He was just Kale, the fragment, fighting for survival alongside a rogue alien vampire. The flux capacitors are stabilizing at 98%, Vesper reported, her eyes glued to the holographic glyphs. But the power drain from the scout attack means we only have a 60% chance of maintaining the cloaking field during the jump. We'll be exposed for a critical window. How long is that window? Kale asked, standing by the edge of his bed, watching her. "0.5 of your Earth seconds," she replied. "But that is an eternity for the Legion." The moment Vesper started the final jump sequence, the sanctuary screamed. The polished glass walls of Kale's pod, and the surrounding chrome structure, began to glow an intense, pulsating magenta. The low hum they were used to escalated into a deep, grinding thrum that vibrated through Kale's bones. 3 minutes to jump window, Vesper announced, her voice strained over the noise. Her wings were fully extended, bracing herself against the power surges, their black membranes flickering with stray arcs of energy. That's when the first alarm triggered. It wasn't the sanctuary's internal warning. It was a high-frequency, piercing psychic shriek that tore into Kale's freshly reassembled mind. "They're here," Vesper roared, spinning away from the console. "The Legion has found the residual energy signature. They are bypassing the outer veil." Kale staggered, clutching his head. The psychic shriek wasn't just a sound, it was an attack, a mental battering ram of hate, dominance, and cold alien purpose. He saw blurred, terrifying images of the Dominators, the hegemony's elite enforcers, tall, armored figures, their own winged forms draped in crimson banners, their eyes burning with the collective will of the Dominion. "Vesper, what about the jump?" "It's automated. I can't stop it now. But they're going to breach the internal field before the window opens." The glass wall of Kale's pod, his sterile prison, was suddenly his first line of defense. Vesper rushed to a secondary console near Kale's bed. "The psychic attack will destabilize the protocol in your mind, Kale. If it destabilizes during the jump, you die and the protocol is scattered forever. They cannot have it." She slammed her hand down on the console. A field of blue energy crackled around Kale's bed, locking him in. "I am channeling a counter-frequency into your pod's containment field. It will isolate the fragment, but it will not hold a direct attack. I have to fight them physically." As she finished speaking, a section of the high cathedral ceiling shuddered violently. A shower of metallic debris rained down, and a section of the roof imploded. Through the gaping hole, a dark, armored figure dropped with inhuman speed and grace. This was a Dominator, the hegemony's legionary. It was monstrously tall, its armor glowing with faint red glyphs, its face covered by a sleek, terrifying mask. Its first target wasn't Kale, the vulnerable human. It was Vesper, the traitor. The Dominator moved like a blur, its weapon, a crystalline blade crackling with energy, lunging straight at Vesper's throat. Vesper reacted instantly. Her own wings flared out to their full, enormous span, acting as a shield. The talons on her hands extended and glowed with a blinding, fierce crimson light. "Traitor! Return the fragment to the hegemony." The Dominator's voice boomed, not through sound waves, but through a loud, crushing psychic projection that echoed in Kale's head. The crystalline blade struck Vesper's wing membrane. The sound was a horrifying shriek of tearing material and pain. Vesper cried out, staggering back, but the attack was parried. Locked inside the blue containment field, Kale watched in horror. The immense power of the two winged figures clashing was overwhelming. Vesper, despite her skill, was already wounded, and the Dominator was relentless. "Kale?" "The subroutines." Vesper screamed, dodging a sweeping attack that melted the chrome floor where she had stood. On the console. "Find the disruptor wave. It's the only thing that will buy us time." Kale frantically reached for the small, reinforced console still attached to his bed, forcing his aching fingers to type. He remembered the cryptic codes from his memory flashes, combining Terran command structure with the alien glyphs he'd observed. Water X7, Light X3, Vitals Hold. He slammed his hand on the Vitals Hold button. The small screen flashed. "Disruptor wave, standby. Requires full core power bypass." "Vesper. It needs the core bypass. You'll lose the jump charge." "Do it," she roared as the Dominator slammed her against the glass of Kale's pod. Her crimson eyes locked onto his, filled with pain and absolute resolve. "We can recharge. If they take you, we lose everything. Activate the bypass." Kale knew this meant delaying their escape, but Vesper's priority was clear: protection of the fragment, not escape. With a desperate surge of adrenaline, he forced his hand to the activation sequence. "Override. Bypass. Disruptor wave." The blue containment field around Kale's bed vanished. All the charging magenta light and the deep thrum of the jump drive suddenly stopped. The entire sanctuary went momentarily dark, powered only by emergency reserves. Then Vesper's entire body glowed with the blinding, deep crimson energy she had been fighting with. The energy he had helped her collect. She unleashed it all, channeling the raw power of the sanctuary's core bypass. A massive, silent disruptor wave exploded outwards from Vesper, hitting the Dominator with the force of a supernova. The Dominator was thrown back, shrieking a noise that was half metallic screech, half pure psychic agony. Its armor cracked and it slammed into the far wall, collapsing in a sparking, twitching heap. Vesper stood alone, swaying dangerously, her wings drooping, her breath coming in ragged gasps. Her uniform was smoking. She had poured every last drop of the sanctuary's power into that single counterattack. "Now, Kale," she gasped, stumbling back towards the main command platform, her hands bloody from the fight. "Now we jump. The Dominator is paralyzed, but the Legion's fleet is coming. We have seconds." She practically fell onto the command console, her taloned fingers flying across the controls. The sanctuary was running on fumes, but the jump drive had an emergency, low-power initiation sequence. Initiating jump sequence. 5, 4. Kale looked at the disabled Dominator, now slowly starting to twitch and move, recovering from the blast. He knew it would be back in seconds. He grabbed the nearest heavy piece of metallic debris, a support strut torn off by the Dominator's entrance. "Vesper, get ready." As Vesper screamed 3, 2, 1, jump, and the magenta light flared back to life, Kale darted out of the pod. He swung the heavy strut with the last of his strength, hitting the Dominator's head with a sickening crunch. The Dominator fell silent, unconscious for the moment. Kale scrambled back into the relative safety of the pod just as the sanctuary's core fired. The world dissolved. The magenta light intensified to white, then instantly, everything was black. Kale felt a terrifying, gut-wrenching wrench. The feeling of his physical atoms being stretched and reassembled across impossible distances. It was a momentary, total loss of bodily integrity, worse than the pain of the memory transfers. Then just as suddenly it stopped. Kale was lying back on the biobet, panting. The sanctuary was still whole but utterly quiet. The light was back to violet, the air was still sterile. The massive hole in the ceiling, however, was still there, a chilling reminder of their recent fight. Vesper was slumped over the main console, her head resting on her arms, her wings hanging limply. She was still. "Vesper?" Kale called out, his voice hoarse. She slowly pushed herself up. She looked utterly exhausted but victorious. She had managed the impossible. "We jumped," she whispered, a hint of deep-seated relief in her voice. "We are deep in the perimeter veil. Completely cloaked. They will not find us here for a long time." She turned, finally looking at Kale, and she offered a genuine, weary smile, the first Kale had ever seen. It softened the harsh lines of her alien beauty, revealing a fraction of the being underneath the warrior facade. "You are a good soldier, Kalen Vance," she said. "You understood the priority. You saved the fragment. And you saved me." She then walked over to the unconscious Dominator. "Now," Vesper said, the smile gone, replaced by a cold, calculating intensity. "We have a guest. And the Dominion's secrets are about to become our assets." Kale looked at the unconscious, monstrous alien laying on the floor, then at the exhausted, powerful alien standing over him. The sanctuary was safe, but the war had just entered a terrifying new phase, interrogation. The atmosphere in the sanctuary had shifted from desperation to a grim, calculated victory. Kale's pod was still glowing faintly blue from the emergency power, and the main chamber now housed a new, terrifying fixture, the Dominator. The giant, armored figure was secured to the chrome floor in the center of the room. Vesper had used heavy-duty magnetic restraints, the same kind that locked down her command platform, to immobilize the creature. Its helmet was removed, revealing a face eerily similar to Vesper's, porcelain pale with high cheekbones and pointed ears, but twisted into a permanent snarl of hatred and raw psychic dominance. Its crimson eyes, unlike Vesper's focused gaze, burned with chaotic, unfocused rage. Vesper worked tirelessly, her movements precise despite her exhaustion. She was rigging a complex array of psychic dampeners around the prisoner. "His name is Xylos," Vesper informed Kale without looking up. "He is a high-ranking Dominator, part of the Legion's inner circle. His mind is a fortress, Kale, but his psychic signature is also a detailed map of the hegemony's immediate movements." Kale, having recovered enough to move, was now standing outside his pod. The blue energy field was gone. He was no longer confined to the bed. "A fortress, but his armor cracked easily enough," Kale commented, leaning against the cold chrome of the pod. "Physical defeat is temporary for them," Vesper stated, securing the final dampener. "Psychic damage is permanent. But Xylos is trained to self-destruct his core memories before interrogation. If we press too hard, he will erase what we need. Vesper finally turned to Kale, her crimson eyes serious. I need your help, Kale. This is not the clean Terran interrogation you are used to. His mind is alien and hostile. I can't enter it safely. Why me? You're the psychic, Kale challenged. I am trained in manipulation and defense, Vesper explained. My caste excels at subtle control. But you, the Infinity Protocol is a psychic weapon designed to shatter the Dominion. The fragment in your mind acts as a natural psychic disruptor. You are an anomaly. You can brush against Xylos's mind without being fully consumed by his hostility. She handed Kale a small, smooth, obsidian device. This is a synaptic conduit. Place it on his temple. You will be the bridge. You will gently probe the surface of his mind, and the protocol's disruptive echo will prevent him from initiating the self-destruct sequence. Kale gripped the device. The idea of deliberately entering an enemy's mind, especially a dominator's, sent a shiver down his spine. And you? What will you do? I will be the shield, Vesper said, her expression softening slightly. I will monitor the conduit, and if his psychic counterattack breaches your shield, I will pull you out, no matter the cost to the Sanctuary's power. We are a team now, Kale. We are tethered. Kale took a deep breath. Lieutenant Kalen Vance, a scout pilot, had just been promoted to psychic intelligence operative. This is why I survived, he thought. Not to run, but to fight in a way no one else can. He walked towards the restrained dominator, his human form suddenly looking small against the alien giant. He placed the obsidian conduit onto Xylos's temple. The moment he did, a wave of crushing hate and contempt washed over him. It wasn't emotional hate, it was an organizational hatred, hatred for his race, his mission, his very existence. Dominator's thought, direct psychic projection weakling. Phil, you dare touch the mind of the hegemony? Your tiny consciousness is irrelevant. Kale gritted his teeth, holding the conduit steady. The disruptive echo of the fragment in his mind flared up in response. A sharp, high-pitched screech of static that jarred the Dominator's psychic dominance. Xylos, you are defeated, Kale said, projecting his voice clearly, forcing himself to focus. The Legion is blind. We need their current position. Tell us where the fleet is. The Dominator laughed, a harsh, mental noise that felt like broken glass scraping his eardrums. You will find nothing. The Dominion is eternal. Vesper, watching the data flow on the conduit, stepped closer. Focus on the location matrices, Kale. Look for the energy signatures of their main command ship. Ignore his noise. Kale closed his eyes, forcing his mind past the hatred and deeper into the fortress. He didn't try to break the walls. He used the fragment's natural static to listen for echoes near the walls. Faint echo. He saw a flash of a solar system, a vast, dark sun surrounded by a ring of debris. He recognized the planetary arrangement from his memories, the Proxima Sector. Faint echo. He sensed a massive, structured psychic presence, the command structure of the Legion. They were congregating, preparing for a sector-wide sweep. Proxima Sector, Kale reported, his voice shaking with the effort. They're grouping. Preparing a massive sweep. Xylos is not a scout. He was the advanced scout for a main invasion force. Vesper's eyes widened in alarm. A sector sweep? That is too fast. Their technology is far ahead of our projections. Kale kept probing, using the conduit to maintain the disruptive static. But as he probed Xylos's strategic mind, he accidentally brushed against something more personal. Dominator's memory fragment. Xylos was standing before a figure even taller and more imposing than himself. It was a female dominator, her armor shimmering with a fearsome, almost holy light. Her face was identical to Vesper's, but her eyes held a chilling, absolute fanaticism. The figure's voice, Psychic Vesper, must be brought back alive, Xylos. The matriarch requires her for the reassimilation ritual. The rogue gene must be purged and her power restored to the hegemony. Kale flinched, pulling the conduit away for a moment. He gasped for air, his heart pounding. Vesper, he has a matriarch. She knows you're still alive. She wants you back for a ritual. Vesper's controlled demeanor shattered. Her face went deathly pale and her eyes, for the first time, showed a flash of pure animal terror that transcended her warrior's resolve. She rushed to Kale, grabbing his shoulders with surprising strength. You saw the matriarch? She whispered urgently. Kale, tell me exactly what you saw. Is it true? Is Vexia leading the hunt? Kale nodded, his eyes wide. Vexia? Yes, that name. She said your gene must be purged and your power restored. Vesper backed away slowly, her hand flying to her throat. The dominator, Xylos, seeing her fear, began to laugh, a triumphant, silent mental howl. Xylos's projection. Yes, traitor. Your sister, Vexia, has been chosen. She will find you and she will personally ensure your power is returned to the collective. You cannot run from your blood. Vexia, Vesper spat the name out like a curse. My sister. We were the matriarch's chosen daughters, trained to lead the legion. She is not just a hunter, Kale. She knows every sanctuary, every contingency, every weakness I possess. Vesper quickly regained her composure, but the terror was replaced by a cold, burning resolve. The Proxima sector is where the Rogue Covenant's main base is located, Vesper revealed, pacing frantically. My fellow defectors, our only chance. Vexia is sweeping that sector not just to find us, but to destroy my allies. She stopped by the main console, her mind racing. We need more data on the sweep's specific trajectory and we need it now. I have to warn the Covenant. Xylos will break before he gives up the tactical data, Kale stated, his mind clear again. The sister angle broke your composure. He'll use it to lock down his mind. Vesper turned back to Kale, her crimson eyes now alight with a dangerous, new idea. Then we won't ask for the data. We will take it, Vesper said, her voice low and steady. Kale, the conduit is too slow. I need you to do what your training prepared you for, a full neural infiltration. We will both enter his mind. Your fragment will hold his psychic walls open, and I will be able to retrieve the data packets directly. Kale felt the cold dread return. You said that was unsafe. Too much psychic stress. Vesper walked towards him, her winged shadow engulfing him. It is the only way, Kale. If my sister finds the Covenant, the war is over. I need a full bypass of the Dominator's defenses. It will be painful, Kale, worse than the memory drain. You will see what it means to be a Dominator. You will see the true face of the hegemony. But we will be connected. If you fall, I fall with you. We are truly tethered now. She reached out, and for the first time Vesper's touch was not one of authority or clinical necessity, but of a shared, desperate burden. Are you ready to truly join the war, Lieutenant Vance? Kale looked at the obsidian conduit, the captured Dominator, and the determined, terrified eyes of the alien vampire. His life as a soldier was over, but his life as the key to galactic liberation was just beginning. The tension in the sanctuary was absolute. Xylos, the Dominator, remained magnetically restrained, his psychic defenses momentarily subdued but dangerously unstable. Vesper stood next to the captive, her obsidian uniform glowing faintly under the violet light. Kale was positioned behind the prisoner, holding the synaptic conduit, the obsidian device, ready. This is not a clean Terran neural link, Kale, Vesper said, her voice low and serious. The hegemony's minds are a psychic weapon. They are not designed for cooperation. I will be your shield, but the fragment must be the key. You must hold the breach open. No matter what visions he throws at you, do not let go of the static. She took a slow, deep breath, her eyes blazing crimson. She extended her large, taloned hand, which was now radiating a smooth, powerful blue energy, the counter-frequency meant to stabilize the link. Place the conduit, Kale. Then hold my hand. We are tethered. Kale nodded. He placed the obsidian device firmly against Xylos's temple. The Dominator's eyes, unfocused until now, snapped open, burning with manic, terrified realization. Kale felt the immediate mental surge, but this time he was ready. He grasped Vesper's hand. Her skin was cold, smooth, and incredibly strong. The moment their hands locked, the powerful blue energy from Vesper's palm flowed into Kale, mixing with the chaotic static of the fragment. The world dissolved. They weren't in the sterile sanctuary anymore. They were plunging into a world of pure thought, the terrifying, structured interior of Xylos's mind. It was a vast, desolate landscape, a labyrinth of black, polished basalt. The sky was perpetually swirling with crimson and black smoke. Towers of sheer psychic will pierce the chaotic sky, and the entire structure vibrated with the overwhelming collective dominion consciousness. Psychic voice, Xylos intrusion. Filth. You will be crushed and assimilated. They were immediately attacked. From the shadows of the basalt maze, grotesque psychic constructs lunged at them, nightmares woven from Xylos's hate and fear. Ignore the projections. Vesper's voice echoed in Kale's mind, clear and commanding, a beacon in the chaos. They are not real. Kale, focus your fragment static. Create a tunnel. Kale focused on the feeling of chaos, the strange, disruptive energy the protocol created. He imagined it as a high-pitched, white noise frequency. The psychic constructs recoiled instantly, clutching their heads as the static tore at their psychic fabric. A shimmering blue tunnel, Vesper's shield, formed around them. The core memory is deep below the central citadel, Vesper guided, pulling Kale forward. That is where the tactical data is locked down. We must move quickly. Xylos is fighting us, Kale. As they moved deeper, the imagery became more chilling. They entered a vast chamber, the Hall of Assimilation. Thousands of ghostly, shimmering figures, alien and human alike, were shackled to the walls. Dark, glowing tendrils extended from the ceiling, slowly draining the figures, feeding their thoughts and memories into the terrifying central mind of the Dominion. This is the truth of the hegemony. Vesper's mental voice was laced with pain. Not a system, Kale. A parasite. They devour other races to sustain their psychic network. I was trained to oversee this. Kale felt a sudden surge of guilt and horror. This was what the Infinity Protocol was meant to stop. It wasn't genocide, it was a desperate act of self-defense against a monstrous entity. Suddenly their path was blocked. A massive, terrifying figure emerged from the crimson smoke. It was Xylos's inner defense mechanism, a psychic projection of his ultimate loyalty. It was a dominator but magnified, its armor fused with living metal. Its eyes were pure, molten crimson, and its massive wings were lined with razor-sharp bone. Xylos's defense, stop. I will not betray Vexia. She is the matriarch's chosen. The defense mechanism lashed out, shattering Vesper's blue shield. Kale and Vesper were exposed to the full, crushing force of the Dominator's psychic will. Vesper cried out in pain, her grip tightening on Kale's hand. Kale? I can't hold it. He's fighting my structure. I need more power. Kale could feel Vesper's resolve faltering, her strength draining. He focused on the fragment, unleashing the chaotic static, but it was not enough against this level of psychic defense. No. Kale projected mentally. Not the static. Your power, Vesper. Unleash your rogue gene. Vesper hesitated for a split second, then made her choice. Her grip on Kale's hand became vice-like. The smooth, cool blue energy vanished, replaced by a searing, ancient and terrifying power. Vesper's mental form transformed. Her wings exploded into their true, full form. A magnificent, dark energy construct, feathered with shadows and tipped with burning crimson light. Her porcelain skin took on the dark, iridescent hue Kale had glimpsed in the crash memory, and the glowing red veins pulsed outside her armor, a visible web of channeled psychic power. Her eyes became twin suns of pure, molten psychic energy. This was the terrifying, beautiful alien vampire guard, the warrior of the Rogue Covenant. I am Vesper of the Free, she roared, a mental sound that shook the very foundations of the labyrinth. Vesper's true power hit the Dominator's defense. The psychic defense screamed as Vesper's energy, a pure, clean, controlled form of the psychic vampirism her race possessed, tore through Xylos's chaotic, polluted form. The two winged figures clashed in a dazzling, blinding storm of mental power. While Vesper battled the massive psychic projection, Kale seized the opportunity. The fight had opened a critical window. He darted through the battling titans, his human consciousness now bolstered by the immense, chaotic power of Vesper's presence. He reached the central citadel, a solid block of frozen, coded memory. He pressed the fragment's static directly against the citadel. Instead of breaking it, the static caused a controlled resonance, forcing the coded packets to unravel. Data flash. Kale saw the full tactical map. The Proxima Sector sweep was a three-pronged attack. The Legion would hit the Covenant's secret outpost, Ethel 9, in 48 Earth hours, followed by 2 decoy raids. Ethel 9. Kale transmitted mentally to Vesper. Vesper, the target is Ethel 9. 48 hours. Vesper heard him. She delivered a final devastating blow to Xylos's defense, causing the construct to explode into shimmering black dust. She rushed back to Kale, her form still burning with raw power. We have it. Now retreat. Vesper tore Kale away, forcing them back up the dark tunnels. As they went, the entire psychic landscape began to collapse around them, Xylos's mind initiating a final desperate self-destruct sequence. They burst back into the sanctuary, both gasping for air. Kale instantly released the conduit in Vesper's hand. He stumbled back, leaning heavily on his pod, his mind reeling from the overload of power and vision. He had seen the terror of the Dominion, the truth of Vesper's power, and the critical data. Vesper, exhausted but alert, quickly moved to Xylos. She reactivated the psychic dampeners, securing the Dominator before his self-destruct sequence could reach the physical plane. She turned to Kale, her physical form returning to her usual serene, though still powerful, guard persona. She walked to him, her face a mask of exhaustion and admiration. You held the line, Kale, she whispered, the raw power slowly receding from her eyes. You saw me, my power. The full extent of my rogue gene. The matriarch calls it vampiric because we feed on psychic energy. But we don't devour, we purify. Kale looked at her, his fear replaced by a newfound depth of understanding and trust. He had been terrified of her, but now he had faced the terror of her people, and he understood her fight. Ethel 9 Vesper. We need to jump now, Kale said, his voice stronger and more resolute than ever before. We can't just warn them. We have to be the shield. Vesper nodded, the weariness momentarily gone, replaced by a fierce warrior's determination. Then the sanctuary is no longer a hiding place, Kale. It is a weapon. And you, Lieutenant Vance, are no longer a fragment. You are the co-pilot. The sanctuary's core began to hum, preparing for a dangerous, high-risk jump toward the heart of the Legion's invasion, the Proxima Sector. The sanctuary's core hummed again, not with the frantic emergency thrum of the last jump, but with a deep, focused resonance. Vesper stood at the command platform, her face grim. This is a high-risk jump, Kale, Vesper stated, her voice tight. We are emerging directly into the Proxima Sector, likely in range of hegemony patrols, simply to make it to Ethel 9 in time. Strap in. Kale was no longer confined to the biobed, but he took his place there, securing the magnetic restraints. He was a co-pilot and this was his first mission. Xylos, the Dominator, remained restrained and unconscious in the center of the floor, a silent, volatile cargo. The jump was a terrifying repetition of the last, a blinding flash of white light followed by the sickening atomic stretch of deep space transit. When the light faded, the sanctuary was silent. The view through the main observation windows, which Vesper had now uncloaked, was breathtaking and terrifying. They were floating in the cold, black vacuum of space, surrounded by a chaotic asteroid field. In the distance, a small, heavily fortified asteroid base, Ethel 9, hovered. Ethel 9. We made it, Vesper murmured, relief evident in her voice. Vesper activated the main comms. The sanctuary's cloaking field flickered off completely. Ethel 9, this is Rogue Covenant Asset Vesper, 741. I have critical tactical data regarding an imminent Legion sweep led by Dominator Vexia. Requesting immediate docking access, authorization code, the cleansing light. A moment of static and then a harsh, female voice crackled over the speakers. Vesper? This is Commander Nix, Ethel 9 Command. We received your distress beacon hours ago, but you were presumed lost. Docking authorized. But Vesper, we are detecting an unauthorized human life signature and a powerful, chaotic psychic echo on board. Explain the anomaly. Vesper sighed, meeting Kale's gaze. This is where it gets complicated, Kale. They hate humans and they fear the protocol. Vesper responded to the comms with cold precision. Commander Nix, the human is Lieutenant Kalen Vance, a prisoner of war. The psychic echo is the Infinity Protocol contained. He is the key to the tactical data and a weapon of last resort. We are bringing a captive Dominator with us. We have no time for debate. Vexia will be here in less than 48 hours. The comms went silent for a long moment. Finally, Nix's voice returned, strained with doubt. Docking is still authorized, Vesper. But be warned, the moment that human or that protocol shows instability, we will purge your ship and your passenger. Bring the Dominator to the central interrogation bay. Commander Nix out. The sanctuary docked with a heavy thud. The outer hatch hissed open, revealing a tunnel of harsh, white military light. Waiting for them were 5 figures, all members of the Rogue Covenant. They looked nothing like the uniformed members of the Legion. They wore functional dark armor, their forms were diverse. 3 looked like Vesper's kind, tall, pale, winged, and 2 were shorter, stockier aliens with thick, scaled skin, armed with powerful rifles. Leading them was Commander Nix, a female with wings that were a beautiful, shimmering emerald color, signifying a different caste than Vesper's black. Her eyes were not crimson but a cool, suspicious silver. The moment Nix's silver eyes landed on Kale, they narrowed in pure, unadulterated hostility. The human must be segregated immediately, Nix commanded, her voice rigid with authority. Vesper, I am disappointed. You risked the entire Covenant for a relic of old Earth's barbarism. The Infinity Protocol is a plague. Vesper stepped forward, her body shielding Kale, her own black wings flaring aggressively in a subtle challenge to Nix's authority. He is not a plague, Commander, Vesper retorted, her voice low and dangerous. He is my co-pilot and the source of the data that will save your base. I vouched for him with my life. He remains at my side until the data is transferred. Nix backed down slightly, respecting the immense power Vesper had just displayed in front of her troops. Very well. Bring the Dominator. You human, keep your distance and do not touch the psychic field. They transferred the heavy, restrained Dominator, Xylos, into the sterile, reinforced interrogation bay. Nix and her team immediately began running diagnostics on the captive. The Dominator is a high-grade target, Nix noted, running a silver glowing hand over Xylos's armored head. But his psychic signature is locked down. We cannot break his defenses without risking his mind core. We already have the data, Vesper stated. The Proxima sweep target is Ethel 9 in less than 48 hours. And the sweep is being led by Dominator Vexia, my sister. The Covenant members exchanged terrified glances. Vexia's name carried legendary fear. Vexia is an assassin of psychic will, Nyx whispered. If she is leading the sweep, she will know our structural weaknesses. Vesper, we must thank you for the warning, but we need confirmation of the invasion trajectory. The timing is too tight for assumptions. Vesper turned to Kale. This is your moment, Kale. We told them you were the key. Now you must prove it. Kale stepped forward, ignoring the hostile glares of Nyx and the other Rogue Covenant members. He walked up to the restraint console next to Xylos, his small human frame standing in stark contrast to the alien architecture. I can confirm the trajectory, Kale said, his voice steady. But not with your equipment. You need to link me to his mind again. Nyx immediately reacted. Absolutely not. The protocol's echo could contaminate our network. We are not putting the Covenant's collective mind at risk for a human speculation. Contamination is your only path to survival, Commander, Kale shot back, his voice taking on the sharp, confident edge of Lieutenant Vance. I have the fragment. I am the only one who can breach a Dominator's mind without killing him. I need Vesper to shield me, and I need access to his current data feed, the one Xylos is secretly transmitting back to Vexia. Kale looked directly at Vesper. Vesper, the live transmission frequency. That's how we get the real-time path. Vesper understood instantly. Xylos, even while unconscious, would be subconsciously broadcasting a low-level status report to his superior, Vexia. That frequency was the definitive proof. He is right, Nyx, Vesper said, overriding the commander. Her wings flared out once more, emphasizing her authority in this crisis. Nyx, I need a neural sync port open for Kale, and I need the strongest psychic dampeners on his access port. I will shield him myself. Nyx hesitated, the fate of the Covenant resting on her trust in a traitor and a human. Finally, she conceded with a growl. Fine. But Vesper, if this human is compromised, you will personally answer to the Elders. Vesper and Kale quickly linked up. Vesper's powerful rogue gene energy provided the shield, and Kale's disruptive fragment provided the key. Kale plunged into the dark periphery of Xylos' subconscious, ignoring the remnants of hate and despair. He focused solely on the live transmission frequency, a tiny flickering thread of light emanating from the back of the Dominator's mind. He reached out mentally, the protocol's static resonating. He didn't break the thread, he carefully wrapped the static around it, intercepting the signal. In the interrogation bay, a huge holographic map suddenly projected from Kale's access port, displaying the full, three-pronged invasion map in real time. The main vector, a massive crimson arrow, pointed straight at Ethel 9. The projected arrival time, 46 hours 23 minutes. The data is confirmed, Vesper announced triumphantly. Ethel 9 is the primary target. But Kale wasn't finished. As he pulled the fragment back, he caught one last chilling piece of data from the transmission's metadata. Vesper, wait. Kale cried out, his body trembling with strain. The data? Vexia isn't just coming for Ethel 9. She's coming for the sanctuary. She knows the ship is cloaked. She's bringing a spatial harvester, a device designed to tear open and collapse localized space to find cloaked objects. Vesper's eyes went wide. A harvester? She would destabilize the entire sector just to claim the fragment. No, Kale corrected, pulling fully back and gasping for air. She would destabilize the sector to claim you. She wants to bring you to the matriarch for that ritual. The fragment is just bait. The Rogue Covenant looked at the holographic map, realizing their savior, Vesper, was also the reason for their imminent destruction. The sanctuary was now a beacon, and Kale's fragment was the target Vexia needed to justify destroying the entire sector. The holographic map showing the Legion's invasion trajectory glowed menacingly in the interrogation bay. The countdown to the attack on Ethel 9 stood at 46 hours. Commander Nyx, her silver eyes hardened with desperation and fear, slammed her fist on the control panel, extinguishing the holographic projection. This changes everything, Nyx declared, turning to Vesper. Vexia is using the spatial harvester to find you, Vesper. The sanctuary and the human are not assets. They are a beacon of annihilation. The hegemony's focus is on the rogue gene for their ritual. Nyx pointed a furious finger at Kale, who stood silently beside Vesper. Commander Vesper, 741, you risked the Covenant's existence for your personal vendetta against your sister. You will initiate the exile protocol immediately. You and the human, Kalen Vance, will take the sanctuary and leave the Proxima sector. Draw Vexia's harvester away from Ethel 9. Vesper's wings flared out, her crimson eyes blazing with controlled anger. You are condemning the Covenant to a slow death, Nyx. Vexia will search the sector, find nothing, and then bombard Ethel 9 out of spite. The Harvester is the threat, not the fragment. We fight Vexia here. How? Nyx challenged, her voice rising to a furious shriek. With what weapon? Our fleet is outnumbered 10 to 1. Vesper looked at Kale, her gaze resolute. With the weapon they fear most. The Infinity Protocol. Vesper stepped forward, her voice dropping to a persuasive, intense tone that demanded attention. We cannot fire the protocol at the entire Legion. It is too destructive. But Kale's fragment can be used to disrupt the Harvester's synchronization matrix. The Harvester requires perfect, undisturbed psychic coordination from Vexia to function. If we flood that synchronization channel with the protocol static at the critical moment, the Harvester will backfire, collapsing the local space around Vexia's flagship. She turned to Kale. The fragment is the key, Kale. We will position the sanctuary as a shield. The sanctuary's core will be channeled through you to maximize the static's reach. Your mind must be the amplifier. Nyx looked aghast. You want to turn the human into a live psychic bomb? Vesper, if that much raw power is channeled through him, the fragment will shatter, and Kalen Vance will die instantly, his consciousness annihilated. He chose to fight, Commander, Vesper shot back, looking at Kale for confirmation. Kale met her eyes, his resolve unwavering despite the terrifying prognosis. It's what the mission was always about, Vesper. Project Infinity was a one-way trip. The goal was to stop the hegemony whatever the cost to me. Vesper's plan was reckless, brilliant, and morally devastating. But Kale, the former operative who carried the protocol's blueprint, knew its crucial flaw. Vesper, wait, Kale interjected, holding up a restraining hand. The plan is sound, but the protocol's effect isn't instant. The static needs a sustained pulse of precisely 0.9 of a terran-second to destabilize a primary hegemony psychic lock. If we use the sanctuary as an amplifier, we will be exposed to Vexia's flagship's weaponry for that entire duration. Kale walked over to the holographic display console and reactivated the map, highlighting Vexia's main flagship. Vexia's ship, the Crimson Judgment, carries a hypergravitic pulse cannon, Kale explained, his military expertise overriding his fear. It will track the sanctuary the moment our cloaking flickers, and it will fire a lethal blast in less than 0.5 seconds. We have to maintain the static for 0.9 seconds. We cannot survive the counterfire. Silence descended upon the bay. Nyx and the Rogue Covenant soldiers looked defeated. Vesper's head dropped, her wings slowly folding in resignation. Then the plan is suicide, Vesper whispered, her voice laced with despair. We die, the Covenant is found, and the fragment is annihilated. The hegemony wins. Kale took a step closer to Vesper, his gaze gentle but firm. No. The plan needs a shield. And a distraction. Kale looked at Xylos, the unconscious Dominator. The Dominator is still alive, still transmitting status data. Vexia will be monitoring her advanced scout status. She won't know we've taken him. Kale turned to Nyx. Commander, I need one of your engineers and the Sanctuary's comms hub. I need to reprogram Xylos' psychic transmission. What are you planning? Vesper asked, her crimson eyes searching his. Xylos' armor and internal biosystems are Dominator grade, built to withstand immense physical stress, Kale explained. Vesper, I need you to physically graft Xylos' psychic emitter onto the exterior of the sanctuary. It will be our decoy. I will then use the fragment to broadcast a fake signal through that emitter, showing Vexia that Xylos has successfully found and contained the fragment. Nyx, intrigued, stepped closer. A fake status report? To trick Vexia's flagship? Yes, Kale confirmed. Vexia's focus is the ritual, not mass destruction. If she thinks her own Dominator has contained the fragment, she will peel away from the main fleet, coming in alone to personally supervise the extraction and retrieve her favored Dominator, Xylos. This gives us two things, a fight against a single ship and a critical distraction. Kale looked back at Vesper, a flicker of genuine affection and respect in his eyes. And most importantly, Vesper, while Vexia's ship is distracted by the decoy, you will use your true form and the rogue gene to create the physical shield for the sanctuary. Your power isn't just psychic purification, it's a massive, controlled energy field. It will only last 0.9 seconds, but that's all the time we need for the fragment to fire. Vesper stared at him, her lips slightly parted in awe. Her face revealed a complex mixture of professional admiration for his tactical genius and overwhelming fear for his sacrifice. You are asking me to put my own life and the last of my energy between the fragment and my sister's main weapon, Vesper whispered. I am asking you to be the shield, Vesper, Kale said softly. The guard who protects the hope. We are co-pilots. I fire the weapon. You keep me alive long enough to pull the trigger. Nyx stepped forward, a rare, genuine look of respect on her alien face. The plan is insane, but feasible. Vesper, you have your fleet. We will use our own meager ships as decoys for the main Legion sweep. But your mission is Vexia and the Harvester. Vesper finally nodded, her gaze fixed on Kale. Her powerful wings shuddered once, then stabilized. Very well, Lieutenant Vance, Vesper said, the words a solemn vow. We activate Project Infinity. I will be your shield. But Kale, if we survive this, you will not die. I promise. I will use the last of my rogue gene energy, not to shield the sanctuary, but to rebuild your synaptic structure. The fragment will be neutralized and you will be free. The plan was set. A human soldier, a rebellious alien vampire, and a captured enemy, all heading for a collision course with a tyrannical psychic matriarch. The atmosphere in the sanctuary, now secured inside a subterranean docking bay on Ethel 9, was electric with desperate activity. Commander Nyx had provided 2 Covenant engineers to assist, but the bulk of the work fell to Kale and Vesper. The goal: graft Dominator Xylos' psychic emitter onto the sanctuary's outer hull and reprogram its transmission. Kale, stripped down to a synthetic undershirt, worked on the complex alien wiring. The sanctuary's comms hub was a dense tangle of crystals and luminous energy conduits. He used the fragmented memories of his Terran training, combined with Vesper's direct guidance on hegemony technology, to create the hack. Xylos remained unconscious, his heavily armored form positioned near the open hull breach. Kale connected a direct neural link from Xylos' psychic emitter, a glowing, skull-shaped device on his armor, to the sanctuary's external comms array. The logic is flawed, Lieutenant Vance, one of the Covenant engineers, a stocky alien named Grok, muttered nervously. If Vexia scans this transmission for more than a millisecond, she will detect the overlay of the human fragment static. Your deception will fail. Kale tightened a final energy clasp. Vexia won't be scanning for flaws, Grok. She'll be scanning for triumph. She wants to believe her favorite Dominator succeeded. The human static won't be a flaw, it will be a signature of containment, proof Xylos has successfully suppressed the fragment and is ready for extraction. He looked at Vesper, who was monitoring the power levels. Vesper, I've patched the primary comms. I need you to initiate a low-level psychic dampening pulse into Xylos' mind core. Just enough to simulate the effort required for fragment containment. That's the key to the deception. Vesper nodded, her face etched with concentration. She placed her hands on the main console. A gentle blue light pulsed from her palms, flowing through the cables and into Xylos. The Dominator twitched subtly, confirming the link. The decoy is set, Vesper confirmed, her crimson eyes steady. Xylos is transmitting the I have the fragment status. Vexia will break away from the fleet and come for us. The engineering work was done, but the most critical and painful part remained: Vesper's training for the psychic shield. She led Kale to a shielded sector of the sanctuary, a sterile bay designed for energy dampening. She removed her obsidian armor, revealing the beautiful, terrible truth of her alien form. Her skin was like midnight velvet, and the glowing red veins pulsed vividly beneath the surface, radiating immense power. Her massive, membranous wings slowly unfurled, reaching the chamber walls. The shield must be perfect, Kale, Vesper said, her voice softer now, stripped of the commander's hardness. We have 0.9 seconds of exposure to Vexia's gravitic cannon. If my concentration wavers, the power density will collapse and we will be atomized. She turned to him, and her eyes held a vulnerability he had never seen before. I have never held my true form stable for a sustained physical defense. My power is designed for psychic attack and manipulation, not physical shielding. Kale stepped closer, his hand reaching out, then stopping just short of her exposed arm. Vesper, remember the memory I saw in Xylos' mind, when you pulled me from the crash? You didn't just extract me. You created a protective energy bubble around us. You are a shield, you just need to trust that rogue gene. That was instantaneous reaction, Kale, she whispered. This requires absolute control. She looked at him, the weight of her promise heavy between them. I promised I would use the final energy burst to save your life, Kale. To neutralize the fragment and rebuild your mind. That energy is part of the shield. If the shield fails, I lose the energy and the promise is lost. You will die with the fragment. Kale finally placed his hand on her shoulder. Her skin felt cool and powerfully alive. Then let's make sure the shield doesn't fail, Vesper. We're co-pilots, remember? We trust the math and the power. Vesper closed her eyes, gathering her focus. She initiated the energy flow. Kale watched, mesmerized. The red veins beneath her skin intensified, glowing like liquid magma. Her wings, now fully extended, began to vibrate, and a shimmering, vibrant blue energy field erupted outwards, surrounding her. The transformation was terrifying yet beautiful. It was the complete, unrestrained power of the alien vampire, not a monster of myth but a living weapon of light and shadow. Kale stepped into the field. The energy felt warm, like standing in the heart of a gentle star. It was pure, clean power, unlike the chaotic static of the fragment. The duration Vesper. Hold it. Kale commanded. Vesper groaned, her body trembling with the strain. Her breath hitched. At 0.7 seconds, the blue shield around her flickered dangerously. I can't, she cried out mentally. The physical resistance is too much. I am overloading. The shield collapsed entirely. Vesper stumbled, her strength momentarily gone, her true form receding. Kale rushed to steady her. It's the fear, Vesper. Not the power. You are afraid of the price. Afraid of Vexia. Vesper leaned into him, her forehead resting against his chest, her massive wings partially enveloping him. The contact was intimate, desperate, and strictly professional, the bond between two soldiers facing certain doom. She knows my every weakness, Kale. She will break my focus. Kale held her, his heart pounding against her cheek. Then let the human be your focus, he whispered. Vexia wants to retrieve her dominator and her sister. She will look at the ship. You look at me. Focus on the life you promised to save. Focus on the reason you started your rebellion. Focus on the future where the fragment is gone and you are finally free. I'll be counting the seconds. Vesper pulled back, her eyes burning with a sudden, fierce resolve. She didn't need romance, she needed a tether to hope. 0.9 seconds, Vesper vowed, the words a sacred oath. You count the time, Kale. I will hold the shield. And then we end this. Kale and Vesper returned to the Sanctuary's command deck. Nyx and Grok stood waiting. The Legion sweep is entering jump phase, Nyx reported grimly. They will emerge in this sector in T-4 hours. Vexia's flagship will arrive 15 minutes later, following the decoy signal. Vesper walked to the main console, her gaze fixed. She put on her obsidian armor, which seemed to fuse with her skin. Commander Nyx, you will use the remaining Covenant fleet to create a diversion for the main Legion sweep, Vesper commanded. Kale and I will handle Vexia. If we fail, you initiate the Ethel 9 self-destruct to deny the hegemony this base. Understood. Nyx gave a slow, respectful nod. Understood, Vesper. May the cleansing light guide your power. As the Sanctuary undocked and ascended into the dark void, Kale stood beside Vesper, no longer a prisoner, but a soldier with a clear, terrifying mission. T-15 minutes to engagement, Vesper said, her hand reaching out to the activation sequence. She glanced at Kale, a fleeting look of fierce affection crossing her face. Ready, co-pilot? Ready, guard, Kale replied, placing his hand on the console next to hers, preparing for the final, potentially fatal countdown. The Sanctuary drifted silently through the cold void, cloaked once more, its hull a dark shadow against the distant, hazy nebula of the Proxima sector. Kale stood beside Vesper on the command deck, the faint glow of the holographic displays reflecting in his determined eyes. T-30 seconds to Vexia's arrival in system, Vesper stated, her voice calm, a shield against the rising panic. The main Legion sweep is engaged with Nyx's diversionary fleet. Is the decoy working? Kale asked, his eyes darting to the sensor readings showing the frantic combat miles away. Perfectly, Vesper replied, a grim satisfaction in her tone. Vexia's flagship, the Crimson Judgment, has detached from the fleet. She is following Xylos's fake containment signal. She believes the prize is ready for her personal retrieval. Kale initiated the countdown timer for the engagement. The only sound in the small command center was the low, steady hum of the Sanctuary's core. 10 seconds to cloaking disengage, Kale warned. Get ready, Vesper. The second we uncloak, she'll see us. Vesper nodded, her hands poised over the main power conduit. The energy grafting to Xylos's emitter had been external, messy, and necessary. The now unconscious Dominator was a technological extension of their hope. Cloaking disengaged. Now! Kale yelled. The Sanctuary's shadowy form became instantly visible. And instantly Vexia's massive, intimidating flagship appeared on their forward view screen. A grotesque, mile-long vessel designed like a predatory manta ray, its hull lined with hypergravitic pulse cannons. There she is, Vesper whispered, hatred lacing her voice. Vexia's flagship didn't hesitate. A psychic message, cold and absolutely dominant, slammed into Kale's mind. Vesper. You cannot run from the matriarch. Return the fragment and surrender. The decoy worked. She's focusing on the Xylos signature. Kale shouted, forcing the pain of the psychic intrusion down. We are exposed. She's locking on the gravitic cannon. Vesper didn't wait. She moved with blinding speed. She ripped off her obsidian armor, throwing it to the floor. Her body exploded into the true form, the terrifying, magnificent spectacle of the rogue gene unleashed. Her skin turned iridescent dark, and the brilliant, molten red veins pulsed outside her body. Her wings flared to their full, enormous span. I will hold the shield, Kale. Vesper roared, her voice now a powerful, resonant chord. Initiate the fragment sequence. Vesper channeled the sanctuary's entire core energy through her exposed true form. A massive, shimmering blue psychic shield erupted around the sanctuary, just as Vexia's flagship fired. A blinding white gravitic pulse slammed into Vesper's shield. The sanctuary bucked violently. Vesper screamed, a sound of profound physical and psychic agony. Kale saw the blue energy shield buckle, the gravitic pulse cannon tearing at its structure, trying to atomize the ship. I am holding it. The shield is holding. Vesper's voice was strained, agonizingly close to breaking. Kale ignored the tremor in his body, the roar in his ears. He focused entirely on the console. His life, Vesper's life, and the Covenant's future depended on his precision. He had to convert the fragment's chaotic static into a focused, sustained pulse. Initiating protocol discharge sequence. 0.9 seconds. Kale yelled. He slammed his hands onto the central conduit, pouring his will, his focus, and the chaotic energy of the fragment into the link. As Kale began the discharge, the gravitic pulse intensified, tearing huge fissures in Vesper's shield. Vexia, realizing the deception, became enraged. Her massive flagship began to shudder. On Kale's view screen, Vexia's image appeared. She was identical to Vesper, but her true form was horrifyingly different. Her wings were not dark and pure. They were ragged, skeletal, and dripping with what looked like psychic corrosion. Her veins pulsed black beneath her skin, and her crimson eyes burned with cold, absolute domination. This was Vexia, the true vampire, who devoured psychic energy without mercy or control. Sister, you will not prevail. The matriarch's will is absolute. Vexia screamed, her voice a psychic battering ram that bypassed Vesper's collapsing shield and tore into Kale's mind. Vesper, weakened by the constant physical assault and Vexia's mental attack, was on the brink of collapse. Her shield flickered dangerously. Kale? I cannot hold. 0.2 seconds remaining. Vesper's scream was raw terror. Kale felt the gravitic pulse tearing at the air around him. He felt the cold touch of oblivion. He looked at Vesper, her face contorted with pain, her rogue gene fighting its last battle. He remembered her promise, I will use the last of my rogue gene energy to rebuild your synaptic structure. He didn't want the promise to be wasted. He wanted her to live. Focus on the future, Vesper. Focus on the freedom. Kale roared, pouring the last of his consciousness into the firing sequence. At the last possible instant, 0.9 seconds into the discharge, Kale hit the final sequence. The fragment's chaotic high-frequency static was channeled, amplified by the sanctuary's core, and fired through Xylos's psychic emitter, aimed directly at Vexia's synchronization matrix. The result was not an explosion but a massive psychic whiplash. The synchronization matrix of the spatial harvester, momentarily flooded with chaos, turned on its master. The space around Vexia's flagship, the Crimson Judgment, began to twist and tear. The ship did not explode. It was shredded by its own weapon, collapsing into a silent, swirling singularity of metal and psychic energy. Vexia's massive psychic projection vanished instantly, replaced by a deafening, cold silence. The gravitic pulse died. Vesper's shield collapsed. She fell unconscious, her true form receding, her body slamming onto the console, critically drained. Kale was thrown backward by the residual energy surge. His head felt like it had been split open. He could feel the fragment in his mind, not shattered but neutralized, its energy completely spent in the discharge. He was alive but barely. He crawled to Vesper, his vision blurring. Her eyes were closed. Her breathing was shallow. Her body, pale and exposed, was barely holding on to life. Vesper. Kale whispered, cradling her head. Vesper's crimson eyes slowly fluttered open. A faint, almost imperceptible smile touched her lips. We won, Kale, she whispered, her voice a mere thread of sound. We did. Now your promise. You need to use your power. Heal yourself. Vesper shook her head weakly. The shield, it took everything. The fragment is gone, Kale. But the energy to rebuild your mind. I have nothing left. Kale felt a devastating sense of finality. They had survived the battle but not the price. Then what happens now? Kale asked, tears blurring his vision. You die? I stay here, a human relic? Vesper reached up, her taloned finger lightly touching his cheek. Her eyes, still shining crimson, were filled with a love and regret that transcended their species. No, Kale, she breathed, the finality of her choice clear. I am Vesper, the guard. My purpose was to keep you whole. The fragment may be gone, but you are not. The war is still out there. And the Covenant, they need their shield. I can give them one last thing. With a final desperate surge, Vesper forced a tiny final glimmer of her rogue gene energy out of her. It wasn't the powerful energy needed to rebuild Kale's mind. It was a single pure warm pulse. She directed the pulse at the sanctuary's emergency beacon and then, with her very last breath, she initiated the self-destruct sequence. You are free, Lieutenant Vance, Vesper whispered, her eyes closing for the last time. The alien vampire guarded my dreams every night, but now my dream is you. Kale felt the gentle, warm pulse of energy Vesper had sent through the sanctuary's beacon before initiating the self-destruct. It wasn't the powerful energy needed for healing or rebuilding, but a surge of pure, directed force that did only one thing. It launched his biobed pod, designed as an escape module, away from the core explosion. The chamber around him erupted in a blinding, silent flash. Kale was thrown against the restraints of the pod, his vision overwhelmed by the furious magenta light of the collapsing core. Then just as suddenly he was in the black, cold void. His pod spun wildly, propelled by the force of the detonation. He watched in horror as the magnificent Gothic structure of the sanctuary, Vesper's home and his prison, was consumed by a quiet, brilliant implosion. The explosion was clean, contained, and designed not to scatter debris, but to obliterate all evidence. The fragment, the Dominator Xylos, the tactical data, all vanished. Kale was alone. He was free. Hours later, Kale's escape pod was retrieved by a Covenant patrol ship dispatched from Ethel 9. He was brought back to the base, bruised, exhausted, but miraculously whole. Commander Nix met him at the docking bay, her silver eyes filled with grief and a profound respect Kale had never expected to see. The sanctuary is gone, Nix stated, her voice heavy. And Commander Vesper. Her signature vanished with the blast. Her rogue gene energy signature was traced only to the final pulse that launched your pod. It was her final act. Kale leaned heavily against the bulkhead. She saved the Covenant, he stated, the words raw with emotion. Vexia's flagship was shredded by its own harvester. The Legion's sweep faltered without its leader. Your diversion worked and Vesper's shield bought us the time we needed. Nix nodded slowly. She died a hero, Kalen Vance. She protected us from the hegemony, and she protected you from yourself. Your fragment is completely neutralized. The protocol's data is gone forever. You are just a man now. Kale felt a strange, terrifying lightness in his mind. The chaotic static, the constant background noise of the superweapon was gone. He was no longer a living blueprint. He was finally Lieutenant Kalen Vance, unburdened. The safe dreams were gone, but the memories of his life, his crash, and his time with Vesper were clear. In the weeks that followed, Ethel 9 stabilized. The Covenant used the chaos from Vexia's defeat to reorganize their defenses. Vesper, the traitor, became Vesper, the shield of Ethel 9, her sacrifice transforming her legacy. Kale spent his days in the sanctuary's wreckage bay, dismantling the remnants of his escape pod. He was offered a passage back to the distant Terran Confederation, a hero returning home, but he refused. One day, Commander Nix found him, her expression thoughtful. Why do you stay, Kale? You have paid your debt. You are free. Kale picked up a piece of the obsidian material from Vesper's armor, a tiny shard that still held a faint glimmer of red light. When I was her prisoner, Vesper told me that my safe dream, the beach, the sun, was my future, Kale said softly. But that was a lie. My future isn't a retreat, Nix. It's the war she fought. He looked at the tiny shard. She was the guard. She guarded the hope, and she guarded the promise of a future without the Dominion. Now, with the fragment gone, they'll target the Covenant again. They'll target her memory. Kale stood up, his gaze clear and resolute. I am a scout pilot, Nix. I know their technology, I know their strategies, and I know the cost of fighting them. Vesper saved my mind, but she also gave me a purpose. I'm staying to fight for her promise. Kale went to the Covenant's flight bay. He selected a small, fast stealth fighter, a ship designed for deep space reconnaissance and rapid engagement, similar to the one he had flown on Project Infinity. He spent weeks refitting it, combining Terran engineering with the Covenant's advanced stealth systems. He replaced the cockpit's holographic display with custom schematics. On the pilot's yoke, he meticulously placed the tiny shard of Vesper's armor, wiring it so it glowed with a faint, steady crimson light. On the hull of the fighter, he painted a simple yet powerful emblem, a single unbent black wing against a field of violet light. The ship was ready. He stood by the airlock ready to launch his new mission. Commander Nix approached him for the last time. She did not try to stop him. "What is the name of your new ship, Lieutenant Vance?" Nix asked, her silver eyes holding a mix of respect and sorrow. Cale adjusted the collar of his new rugged Covenant pilot uniform. He looked at the vast, unburdened blackness of the sky that Vesper had fought so desperately to free. "Its name is the Sanctuary," Cale replied. "And I am its pilot. My dreams are my own now, but my path is hers." He stepped into the cockpit, engaged the engines, and launched into the void. The Sanctuary, cloaked and silent, flew towards the distant hazy light of the Proxima sector, carrying the legacy of the alien vampire guard and the unyielding resolve of the human who now fought for her dream.